Hey, folks.
Hey, right here. Mark, thank you for joining. Amazing. I appreciate it. Amazing.
I was driving with my dad to practice, and I said, "Hey, Dad, is Wayne Gretzky really that much better than me?" And my dad said, "Well, maybe we should take a right-hand turn here or something like that." So, yeah. Are you man enough to ask the tough questions about yourself? Anything less than everything won't be enough. What are you willing to risk to win? Anybody can give me a captain, but if the players don't allow you to lead them, it doesn't matter. What are you going to do to earn that trust for those players to allow you to lead them? They're allowing you to lead them. So what are you going to do with that? There's no linear path to the top. I mean, you're going to get knocked down. You're going to suffer some setbacks. You are going to suffer some disappointments along the way. Do you have enough courage? Do you have enough grit? Do you have enough determination?
Yeah.
And what are you going to do to get it?
What's up, guys? I'm at the Apex in Las Vegas, Nevada for another episode of Champion Mindset. Today I am joined by one of the greatest hockey players of all time. He's a 6-time winner of the Stanley Cup. He is an MVP. He is now a broadcaster. This dude is just an absolute legend on the ice. Today I'm joined by none other than Mark Messier. But what's most important, Mark? Captain, right? The word captain matters.
Well, thank you.
To champions, and you're a captain, so Mark Messier.
Appreciate you being a big fan of yours, so great being on with you.
A lot of people, they think about the big moments, right? But a lot of champions come from humble beginnings, small towns. I grew up in Lafayette, Louisiana.
Yes.
Right? My journey took me to Colby, Kansas, where I thought Lafayette was small. Colby, Kansas, they had 5,000 people. 3,000 were in the college. But ultimately, I ended up defending the heavyweight championship of the world in Madison Square Garden.
I saw it.
Against Derek Lewis. It was crazy.
Yeah.
You grew up in St. Albert in Alberta, but you ultimately won a Stanley Cup in the Mecca, in the Garden. Mm-hmm. How was growing up in that small town, and how did that shape you, right, to become the guy that could eventually lead a team to a Stanley Cup in that big arena?
Yeah, you're right. Edmonton, Alberta, St. Albert was a little suburb of Edmonton. My dad was a former hockey player. Having that knowledge of what hockey is from a very astute situation where I understood what it meant to be a good teammate. Obviously, technically, we worked on the skills and all that kind of stuff. And so I was a very late bloomer. And I played against kids that were much older than me all the time because my dad I have an older brother that was 4 years older than me, 3 years older than me. And so my dad didn't have to, coach 2 different teams. So I played up. But I think to your point, we're humble people. We work hard. I love the game of hockey. It was never a problem for me to go to practice. I loved the practice. I loved the opportunity to get on the ice every time I could. And ultimately, the passion was just there to really put the work in that's required to reach the pinnacle of any sport.
Yeah.
But I really think, having my father being an ex-hockey player really helped me understand what it took to be a great teammate, because ultimately in hockey, you have to be a great teammate in order to become a champion. And that was, I think, one of the things that really kind of set my career on the right trajectory once I started to get into a little more of competitive hockey, as I started to get 15, 16, 17, and then obviously turning pro. That really benefited me.
We all have our journey, right? Like I told you, I went to Colby, Kansas, which was tiny. Then I went to Stillwater, Oklahoma State, the Olympic Games. But I didn't just end up in the UFC, right? I was in Strike Force. Ultimately, I won those championships in the UFC. My journey was a long one. Yours was also. But Mark, Tom Brady and I were talking about, quite frankly, how terrible we were young. You weren't. Mark, I know you're a humble guy, but you weren't. You were a good athlete or good in hockey to the point that you played for a under 20 team at 15 years old.
Right.
How?
Well, a couple things. One is that when I say I was a late bloomer, it's kind of hard to say I was a late bloomer because I turned pro when I was 17.
Yeah.
But I missed the junior experience where you play junior hockey at a high level, and it kind of mirrors the NHL. You play this 70-some games. You travel by bus and all that, so it kind of mirrors the NHL. But I missed that because I was planning on going to college, so I was playing in a Tier 2 level league, getting ready to go play in college hockey in Denver University, following my brother's footsteps. Back then, the WHA, which was a rival league of the NHL, was starting to sign young players before they reached the draft into the NHL. And so I was one of those kids that went early. And it was a great experience for me, but looking back on that, I had to develop my game at the pro level. And so I never really excelled at like from 10 to 11, 12, 13, 14. In Bantam, we won one game. I mean, out of the whole season. And I only started to grow when I was about 16. About 15, I was like 5'9", 150 pounds. And all of a sudden, I turned 16 and I started to grow. And then my skating became better. And then ultimately we played junior hockey, to your point, when I was 15 against guys that were 20. I was fighting guys that were 20 years old when I was 15. And I just started to work on my game. I started getting stronger. My skating became better. And pretty soon, miraculously at 17, I was playing pro hockey.
That's crazy.
When looking back on it now, I probably wasn't ready for it because I hadn't had time to really develop my skill. But I was at that time. I'd become 6'1". I was 200 pounds, and I was fighting a lot in junior. So I could handle myself a little, or at least I thought I could handle myself until I got against some pretty big, tough guys at the pro level there. But in the end, it worked out for me because when I got drafted back into the Edmonton Oilers, when that league folded, I went back into the draft. I got drafted by the Edmonton Oilers in the 3rd round.
Yep.
And that's when we joined Gretzky and all the great players in Edmonton. And I felt I had a leg up on all the guys that were getting drafted that year just because I had played a year in pro. So it ultimately helped me.
But in the WHA, you're playing pro, but your dad was on the coaching staff?
No, not when I turned pro. He coached.
So he was on the coach staff of the other team.
He coached me. He did coach pro, but he was coaching the Edmonton Oilers farm team when I was playing with Edmonton.
But did he coach you on that team?
In junior.
Okay.
No, never
in pro.
Never
in
pro.
junior,
Yes,
right? When you're playing 20-year-olds and you're 15.
Yes.
Your dad's on the coaching staff.
Yes, he's coaching. He's a head coach.
So if I'm on that team, right? I'm thinking this 15-year-old kid is there because his dad's on the coaching staff.
Right.
So they make it harder for you.
Right.
Right? Whereas they might check you a little bit more. They might be, how did you keep your mind strong knowing that you had to not only deal with the obstacles of being a young guy playing older people, but also making sure they did not think you were there because of your father being on the staff?
Well, I've been in that situation myself as when I coached my son, and not giving him too much, but giving him enough. Because you cannot, it can be detrimental to the kid if you're the dad coaching and you don't give him what he deserves for fear of everybody thinking that you're favoring him. So that's a really fine balance. And my dad, was a school teacher. He got his master's degree in education there. He was a coach. He was a mentor. He mentored and coached kids all the way through junior hockey and sent countless kids into college hockey and pros. And so he understood that the psychology of coaching. These kids respected him immensely. To this day, they reach out to him all the time. So I was lucky to have a coach at being my father. But also, as a player, my brother played junior hockey. He's 3 years older than me, so he played junior hockey at 15. So I had my sights set on that I got to play junior hockey at 15. But I was behind the curve a little bit the year that I was supposed to play junior hockey. And it was 50-50 whether I was going to make the team or not. And one day I was driving to practice with my dad and talking about, certain things on, and, Wayne Gretzky at that point had become this sensation across Canada for everything he was doing. So I was driving with my dad to practice and I said, "Hey, Dad, is Wayne Gretzky really that much better than me?" And my dad said, "Well, maybe we should take a right-hand turn here or something like that." So,
He's avoiding the question.
And at this point, we're barely talking going to the rink because I'm so focusing on trying to make the team, and I know he's a coach, and so that we had this whole, the dynamic going between parent and son and coach and player
athlete,
and all this kind of stuff going on. And ultimately, I did make the team, and I think I made the team on my merit. And I have to take back a couple of years because I was also the stick boy for my brother when they won a Canadian national championship while my dad was coaching, and I was 14 years old or 13 years old at the time, and I was basically the stick boy for these guys. And so I saw my dad give dressing room, speeches to the players. They were brawling in warm up. There was a massive intimidation back then for in junior hockey, and so when I got to be 15 years old, I really knew that part of the game. And I knew that if I was going to play, I wasn't going to be playing a lot of minutes, but I'm going to earn my place on the team by being physical. And I remember, squaring off with guys that were 20 years old, and this is what you got to do when you're trying to earn your spurs. So I think I gained the respect ultimately of the players on the team, and they had enough respect for my dad that he wouldn't have kept me on the team if I wasn't ready to do it, and physically or emotionally ready to play.
Mark, but that question, asking your dad, is Wayne Gretzky that much better than me, tells me your mentality, right? A champion doesn't think like everyone else. There's something that separates them where you don't look at the guy that's right in front of you on the bench. You look at the very top, right? You go and you look at the top of the game and you go, I recognize that is what I need to be. But when it comes to Stanley Cups, which you won a ton of them, did you have that vision when you were in the WHA? Could you think down the line that far to becoming a Stanley Cup champion?
It was always a dream from the time that you play hockey. I'm sure fighting and wrestling, and then going into the UFC, you probably wanted to be a world champion. So you have the big vision. Obviously, for me, I started really getting to be better when I was about 16, 17 into the pros, and then when I turned pro and became drafted by the Oilers, I was still working on my game, but I got to see pure genius every day in practice.
Yeah.
Because, you talk about Wayne Gretzky, he arguably the best, the greatest athlete of our last 100 years. If you just put his statistics against any other athlete, his numbers will tell you that he is. But I got to see his preparation. He was so far, I'm 8 days older than him. We come to the Oilers at the same time. I'm watching him on a day-to-day basis of his practice habits, of what makes him special. And to have that kind of, when I say pure genius in front of you every day, you'd be crazy not to watch what he's doing and what makes him special. He made me a better player because I watched him, his skill set, his work ethic, his preparation, his mindset, all the things that it takes to be and to play at that level. I always say that I went to pick him up early in our career in his apartment, and he was getting ready upstairs, and I looked on his fridge, and he had our schedule mapped out on his fridge of every game that we're going to play that month. And, it'd be St. Louis on a Monday. He had to have 3 goals, 2 assists already penciled in. The next game, 3 goals, 4 assists, 2 goals, 2 assists, all the way through the whole month. I'm going up there and go, wow, this guy is really thinking about this. And I'm thinking about where we're going to go for a beer after the game. I'm thinking that, wow, I got a long way to go here. I'm not anywhere near that. I was focused. I worked out hard. I was a gym guy. I was prepared. I never wanted to lose because I was beat physically or I was fatigue became a factor in it. So I was always physically ready to play. And I grew up with a guy with my father who played hockey, so I knew the mental side of the game, but at that point at 17, I was having a lot of fun. At 18 years, I was having a lot of fun, but I realized there's a different level of concentration and preparation that it takes to be the best. And so gradually, that started to creep into my game with everything else, and then my skills started to come better. I started to improve everything, and all of a sudden, everything just kind of started to come together when I was about 22, 23 years old. Maybe even before that, but really about third year into the league, I scored 50 goals and made the All-Star team, and that's when it really all started to come together.
But you're on that team with Wayne Gretzky, right? That has to foster a obligation to work to get to the next level. 5 years in, you're on that same team with Wayne Gretzky and a number of other great players. You guys win the Stanley Cup for the first time. but you also win the playoff MVP.
Right.
Right? Like,
yeah.
how special is that? And when you think about the level of commitment and the mindset of knowing you're stepping onto the ice every single day, one of the greatest of all time, in another team that has great players, what allows you to elevate yourself to that point that when it's all said and done, you're not only holding the cup, right? Which is amazing, by the way. I held it recently, but you are the MVP.
A couple things. One is that we knew Wayne was going to do special things because he was just different. And we knew his career was going to be special. And he was so focused in on smashing every record in the record books. And we knew he was going to win a Stanley Cup eventually just because of who he was. And I'm sitting to myself, I want to win a Stanley Cup.
Yeah.
So how can I help? How can I support? And we're I guess all of us were so thankful that Wayne was such a great leader and brought everybody into the circle, was unselfish, treated everybody amazing, acknowledged the guys that played lesser roles, the trainers, the doctors, everybody, the whole ecosystem around a hockey team he brought into that fold. And we realized that we have an opportunity here to support him as being the greatest player to ever play the game. And this is going to give us an opportunity to win a Stanley Cup, which is a dream of ours.
Yeah.
And so we went on that journey together. And, we had some setbacks early on. We made the playoffs. We lost. We had disappointments. We were, failed at times. Ultimately, we did win the Stanley Cup in year 5. And it was the most incredible, when I look back on it, it was the most incredible 5 years to ascend to that height and the lessons learned, the disappointments, the setbacks, always fighting back. And I was a guy that I was never thinking about the MVP. I didn't care about the MVP. I was just trying to figure out how to, play my role on the team. I had by that time, 5 years into our career, I was playing behind Wayne in this number 2 center ice position.
Yep.
I was a much more physical player than Wayne, so we complemented each other perfectly. We could set the table for him in some tough arenas, physically, and kind of get the game where he could really take over offensively. So our styles match perfectly. But to your point, it never once in those 5 years did I think about, I want to win the Conn Smythe, which is the most valuable player.
Yep.
It happened organically. It happened naturally. And for me, it was always team first. And I wrote the book, No One Wins Alone.
Yeah.
You can't win alone.
You can't win alone.
You can't win alone. I don't care if you play an individual sport or whatever it is. You need people around you to help you in every way, shape, or form. And that's a mentality I grew up with my dad. My dad was a tough right-handed defenseman who fought for his teammates. He was a fighter. He was a tough, rugged defenseman. And, I always tell the guys that, and he always fought for his teammates. In one game, they got into a tough situation, and 3 guys got him in the corner, and they got him pretty good, and none of his teammates helped him. And so he got kicked out of the game. And so he was waiting for everybody for the game to end, and the first guy that came through the dressing room door, he
punched him in the face.
And the next guy grabbed him and cold-cocked the next guy, and he goes, if you sons of bitches aren't going to fight on the ice with me, you're going to fight in the dressing room. So the mentality was, so I grew up with the mentality that we're all for the team. Mm-hmm. We sacrifice everything for the team. And the team is the most important part. It trumps every individual aspect of it. Yeah. And that's the mentality that we took, even with Wayne. And Wayne had the same exact mentality. So collectively, this magic happened in Edmonton, and we're still, considered the greatest team. The 1985 team, I believe, was still voted the greatest team in the last 100 years. So, and you can't. Individuals don't make great teams.
Big news, UFC and sports fans. The world's #1 sports fan festival, Fanatics Fest, is making its return to New York City. Fanatics is bringing you closer to the leagues, teams, UFC fighters, and athletes you love across 4 action-packed days in July. So meet your favorite athletes, get your hands on exclusive merch, catch live podcasts, and interact with the biggest names in sports. Tickets are on sale now, and fans of the podcast can use the code UFC Fight 10 at checkout for a 10% discount. Head to fanaticsfest.com to get your tickets today. In fighting, there's a saying, and this is, to me, it's kind of crazy. You know, I believe that we got this from Ric Flair. One, to be the man, you got to beat the man. In fighting, first off, you don't have to beat the man. The Stanley Cup champion the year prior does not need to be sitting for you to become the champion. And in order to be considered the man, you got to defend the belt. You got to defend it.
Yeah,
you guys won 4.
Yeah.
You set some high expectations early in your career, and then you win 4. Was there ever a time in that run where you're like, man, this is crazy? And as people go in and come out, what is your obligation for you to now take a bigger stance as a leader? Right? Come with me. Come with Wayne as we go on this journey to trying to become some of the best teams that have ever skated the ice.
Well, I think what you're talking about is culture.
Yep.
Creating a culture that's conducive to winning. And what is the expectations of you when you come to our team? Because we have a 25% turnover each and every year in hockey, somewhere around there where, 5 or 6 guys from the year before will move. We'll have to bring in 5 or 6 guys, not necessarily key component nucleus guys, but the depth players. And so bringing those guys into the fold each and every year, you have to teach to the culture. And, when Wayne was there, we won 4 Stanley Cups in 5 years. And we won 2, lost, and then won 2 more, and then he was traded to Los Angeles. And when Wayne got traded, I became captain, and now we're trying to figure out, and everybody's saying, you guys aren't anything without Gretzky. And sure enough, Daniel, who do we play the first year after him getting traded?
You played him.
L.A.
Yeah.
And I always say that, you got to take your ego out as being a leader, and, you got to bring everybody into the fold. And I know these lessons, and I've worked hard on all this, and I know, and sure enough, we play them. And I got so focused in on making sure that we won that series to show that we could win without Gretzky. I forgot all the fundamentals of leadership. And sure enough, we got up 3-1 in that series, ended up losing it in 7 games. And, I was trying to play 30 minutes. I was trying to do everybody's job. I was trying to do the Zamboni in between periods. I was out selling popcorn. Well, you know what I mean? I was trying to do everything to ensure that we win, but I didn't include the teammates. I lost the team because I was trying to do it all myself. The most fundamental thing you can do as a leader is you have to include the people around you.
Bring them with you.
That was a tough summer, but ultimately we came back and won the 5th Cup in 7 years. And everybody would always ask me, like, is this very validating and gratifying for you guys to be able to win without Wayne? I go, no, it didn't have anything. We would have rather have had Wayne with us.
That's surprising because so many greats like Shaq. Could you have won without Kobe? And Shaq famously said, I love Kobe, but I would have won with Penny, right? I would have imagined that in a team sport, because we don't have that, right? When I'm in that octagon, it's me.
Yeah.
I've got to win that fight. Granted, we bring a team of guys with us to the cage, our coaches, and they're our army on that night, and all of our teammates are with us. But in that octagon, it's one person.
Right.
Whereas you've got to bring that team with you. I would have imagined that when you have a bit of an umbrella in Wayne Gretzky, right, he shades you. But when you step into the light, it's like now, Mark Messier, you're the guy.
Yeah.
Winning without him, I would have thought that would have been like a little bit of a validation to you also, because it's hard when you have a great like that on your team, because they always generally will get the credit that they rightfully deserve.
The stage is always big enough for everybody when you win.
Yeah.
I never looked at it as shading. I never looked at it because of how he interacted with us as a teammate. And everybody else can have their opinion of what's happening and
but you know what's going on in the room.
We know what's going on
in the building.
We know what's going on in the room. You know what I mean? And unless you're in the dressing room and seeing that and feeling that, everybody can say what they want. And it's okay to have an opinion. And so when he did get traded, and then we did go on and win, it wasn't about validating that we could win without him. It was a testimony to the grit and determination of the guys that were still there, and the culture worked again. And we were able to bring new young players into that to play to the culture. That was the most important thing of that lesson, in my opinion. Not validating that we're great players and we can win without Wayne, but validating the culture that we had created was able to sustain a loss like Wayne Gretzky and continue to go on and win. And that's a testimony to the great players that I sat beside.
Yeah. And any champion has to adjust, right? Obviously, you lose a guy like Wayne Gretzky. there are a lot of mental adjustments you have to make. You win the MVP. What type of adjustments did you have to make in order to keep the Oilers at the level that they were? Even if you weren't winning, you were still very competitive and in the conversation. Like, what type of adjustments mentally did you have to make?
Well, for me, I became captain, so that was a big step for me. I didn't really have to change my leadership style because Wayne and I were very different. I was always much more vocal than Wayne. But Wayne was he didn't say a lot, but when he did speak, it was like, wow. And then he would get really, and he would get very emotional and very mad at times, but he didn't do it often. So when he did it, it was like, whoa. But he led through example, and he led through his generosity and the way he included everybody. And he had great support around him. Myself, Kevin Lowe, and all the other great players that really were able to support him. And so the biggest adjustment for me really became that when we lost Wayne, we're losing 180 points out of the lineup from an individual. How are we gonna make up 180 points from one player? So I turned my attention to being from more of a two-way defensive player to more of an offensive player, and that was a big change for me because, I'd play more of a matchup role when Wayne was there, and more of a shutdown two-way, power forward behind Wayne, and so me having to provide more offense was a different mindset that I had to start to take on. And then, of course, we always joke, we'd always go to these off-sites in the summer, and I had to stand up and address the team once in a while as a leader. That was a big adjustment, but little things like that were really not that big a change for me. Like it was business as usual. I didn't really change that much as from my leadership in the dressing room, and I didn't want to try to be something I wasn't because it would have looked unauthentic to the players if all of a sudden I've become captain now and all of a sudden I've changed. Like, why do you change? Because you're a captain, right? So it was kind of more business as usual, other than the fact we're losing the greatest player ever.
And that ain't fun. And that's not fun.
Yeah, that wasn't fun.
But Edmonton's home, right? You spend all this time at home. You get a lot of success at home. I was in New York City recently, and let me tell you something. That's a different place.
Yeah, it is. Yeah,
you go to the Rangers, and you want to talk about culture. There was no culture when you got there. What was the state of that franchise when you got there? And what were the lessons that you thought, I have to bring this from Edmonton into New York if we are to have a chance?
Well, it became apparent after 12 years in Edmonton that my time there had come to an end. The team had kind of pretty much done everything we could with that group of players, and they were going to have to kind of reset the franchise and start to rebuild from the ground up. And it was just time to move on, both personally and professionally. So the coach and general manager, and at the time, Glenn Sather asked me, if that's what you wish, where would you like to go? And I said, Glenn, I'd really like to go play and live in New York City. And he goes, well, let me see what I can do. And ultimately, he made the trade for me to go to New York City. And at the time, they hadn't won the Stanley Cup in 51 years.
51 years.
And I grew up hockey, the Montreal Canadiens, New York Rangers. I know the story. I know the pressures of playing in the media capital of the world. And I'm thinking to myself, well, okay, that's fine. I'm coming off 5 Stanley Cups in 7 years and 6 finals in 8 years or 9 years. And so, I kind of pretty much got the roadmap, and I'll be able to bring all this experience into the dressing room. And about 2 weeks into the first year I was there, I went to stand up and say something. We weren't playing well, and I went to say something in the dressing room and using the reference of what we did in Edmonton, and thank God I caught myself, because the guys in New York couldn't have cared less of what happened in Edmonton. So I'm thinking I'm sitting on all this IP, all this intellectual property that from conducive to winning. I can't use it. Now I got to do the same thing that would happen in Edmonton. I got to start from ground zero and start the experiences with these players and to go through the ups and downs and start to create a culture from square one and do it all over again. And that was like, oh, geez, I wasn't anticipating that.
Yeah.
Ultimately, in the end, it was the best thing that could ever happen because we did exactly that. We suffered some tough losses in the first couple years, and And ultimately, the third year, we're able to do something that hadn't been done in 51 years.
It's crazy.
To win a Stanley Cup in New York City. It was an unbelievable experience in so many different ways. Original six team, generations of people, fathers, sons, daughters, mothers, aunts, uncles, this whole 3 generations of people that were waiting to see a Stanley Cup on Madison Square Garden ice, and here or not, we do it in Game 7. It was insane, and it got so big it just started to transcend the game of hockey because of the story that was being told and the history behind it, and the way it all unfolded. And to be a part of that team was something I'll never forget. It was an incredibly powerful moment. It took me years to be able to talk about it without like getting super emotional. It was just, when I think back about it now, and the likelihood of us being able to do it,
It's not.
It's hard.
Not
It's hard to win. Like, you know what I mean? And there's so many obstacles playing in a city like that, as you know, and then you're fighting the history, and you're fighting the ghosts, and you're fighting the demons, and you're fighting all the naysayers. And you gotta just block it out. And thankfully, I had guys around me that had won before, and some young guys that were incredibly talented players like Brian Leach and Mike Richter and Alex Kovalev and Adam Graves, and then we put together with our young nucleus with some guys that I'd played with in Edmonton, Glenn Anderson, 6 Stanley Cups, Kevin Lowe, 6 Stanley Cups, Jeff Bukaboom, a winner, Adam Graves, like I mentioned, Steve Larmer, Dougie Litzer, our black aces, the guys that were, are the depth guys that don't play every game. They're just an unbelievable group of guys that came together and did something that hadn't been done in a long time.
I watched that documentary, Game 7. It was insane, the energy that was in Madison Square Garden. But there's a lot of stuff that comes with going to New York. Media scrutiny is one of those things, right? You didn't do anything in terms of the Game 7. You played a tremendous game as always. But it was the conference semifinals where you went to the media down and said, we're going to win. Mark, if you want to put some pressure on yourself, you go to the media and you say, we're going to win. Hey, the great champion Alexander Volkanovsky said adversity is a privilege. You earn that. It almost seemed like you invited pressure into that game, guaranteeing a victory. It's like Babe Ruth going like this.
Yeah. As a captain, you every day you walk into that room, you got to reinvent yourself, and you got to come in with an attitude that this is a new beginning. How can we make this day the best ever? How can you find the miraculous in the mundane? Why is this day special for us? No matter where it is, it could be in January on a bus ride to practice. You got to find the joy in that. And as a captain, you're always monitoring the team's confidence level and where we're all at, from a confidence standpoint to, players have problems. The coach might have sat somebody. So you walk through the dressing room and you can just start to feel energy. You don't even have to, you can just feel positive, negative energy. And that was one of those times where we needed to figure out a way to play better. And the way that we needed to do it, we couldn't think that New Jersey was going to play poor.
Yeah.
We needed to figure out a way to elevate our game. And when you lose momentum, if you lose belief, it's over. You have to have belief. And so as my intention with that, of guaranteeing the win, was for the players to get up and know that I believe that we could go on and win.
Yeah.
I've won before.
Yeah.
I know we can beat this team. We have to earn it, but we can do it.
Yeah.
So let's figure out how we're going to do it. What are we going to do different to change the momentum? We can't expect the same thing in a different result. So what are we going to do? So you start with the belief. And then once you got the belief and everybody thinking, okay, we can do this, then how? How are we going to do it? Because if you just go into the same game plan, that's going to be short-lived. And so that was the impetus behind the guarantee. And I didn't care if it was, bulletin board material. I felt that if they needed that to get themselves motivated, that was good for us. So that didn't matter to me. I was solely focused. I knew we had to win that game. And if we could win that game, coming back for Game 7 in New York City, and then I felt the team on the West, we were the best team in the league. We won the President's Trophy that year.
Yeah.
This was our time. And you're never going to go on a cup run where you don't face adversity, and you have to look each other in the eye and say to each other, is this as far as we can go? Or are we done? Are we going to be like every other team for the last 54 years and go home where we almost did it? No, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
We're not doing that. How are we going to win this game? Let's get focused. Let's figure out how we're going to do it, and let's go. We're good enough to do it. Let's go do it.
A lot of my greatest moments came after losing. In MMA, very few people preserve the O. Nobody stays undefeated. Habib Nurmagomedov has somehow managed to go 29-0, and that's crazy.
You got out at the right time.
Yes, but eventually somebody gets you.
Of course.
I've had some great moments after a loss. You don't get to Game 7 unless the other guy beats you 3 times.
Exactly.
How quickly did you realize, I know I will have to go through these downs to ultimately experience these great highs? Because I think people, they don't necessarily understand that.
Right.
They look at you and they see all the Stanley Cups, but you played so many years. I was telling Tom Brady this. I go, you're the greatest player of all time. You won 7 Super Bowls. You played 21 years.
Yeah, exactly.
You lost more
exactly.
than you won, but
technically we're losers.
Yeah, but you never had to. But you never feel that way as a champion, right? Your mind won't allow for you to drift too far away from the thought that you're the best in the world.
Well, I think it's another way to get to know yourself.
Yeah.
And ultimately, you got to know yourself. You got to know what you're capable of. You got to know how far you can push yourself. And without those losses, you got to look at those losses as great teachers. And what are the lessons? Are you curious enough to know what the lesson was? Are you man enough to ask the tough questions about yourself? Not about the team.
Those conversations are tough.
Those are tough.
Those are tough.
But if you're not going to have those, you're not going to get better.
Nope.
And where is your weakness? Where's your weakness mentally? Where's your weakness physically? Did you put the work in? Were you disciplined enough? Did you do everything you could to minimize the factors that you could control? Because in our sport, and even sometimes you can't control things, but let's control what we can. Yeah. Our discipline, our conditioning, our preparation, our mindset, all the things you can, and then give yourself the best opportunity. And to your point, those years are never lost years when you lose.
No.
You have to take something out of those. Otherwise, you're just spinning your wheels there, and nothing will change in next year if you don't use that as motivation and to get yourself to be a better, more complete player on and off the ice. And that's what, and then every year September comes around, it springs eternal optimism that this is going to be the year.
Yeah.
But it's going to be the year if we make it the year.
Yeah.
You don't win by accident. You don't back into a championship.
No, you don't.
And I don't care if you're hockey, football, fighting, whatever it is, you win because you put the time and you're prepared and you've learned the lessons, and then you execute when the moment matters the most. How do you allow yourself to execute when it matters most?
So you're in Game 7 against the Devils. We're going home. It's over. You're going to the Stanley Cup Finals. 7 seconds left. They score a goal to send the game to overtime. That's a long break in between periods. How do you get the team and everybody back?
Well, thankfully, I was supported by with a lot of guys that were leaders in their own right, and with a lot of experience on our team. And so in that particular moment that we're talking about, it was one of the ones that everybody was a little bit, we were 3 seconds away of going to the Stanley Cup Finals. You have to level set very quickly. And so get a drink of water. We'd normally change our shirts, so get a dry shirt on. Get yourself ready to go. Take a breath. And then focus in on execution again. Bring it all back around. Okay, the disappointment there, but then have a singular focus. What's our singular focus going out of the dressing room? And it's always in those kind of moments like this, execution. What do I need to do as an individual, and what do we need to do as a team 2 points. Anything more than 2 points is going to get lost in translation. What do I have to do as an individual? Reminder. What do we have to do as a team? Second reminder. 2 things. So everybody leaves a dressing room with the thought that I got 2 things to remember. What do I have to do to execute the game plan individually and as a team? And so, so all the disappointment, all that gets kind of misplaced. With now you're only thinking about execution, what I need to do in order to be successful, and then you trust. Then you got to let trust enter into it. That okay, let's just get back to it, and we're gonna win the game. Let's just execute the game plan. We're good enough to win. We got a great goaltender. We got great players. Someone's gonna make a play eventually.
Yeah,
that's what misplaces it. Yeah.
You know what's the greatest thing is so many game sevens, right? And in that documentary, you talked about the noise, getting rid of it. I remember, Mark, I swear, every time I went into that octagon, it was just insane noise.
I can't even imagine.
It was just insane noise.
Oh my goodness.
Right? And then the moment the referee would bring us to the center, there's like me and the guy that wants to fight me, the referee, some ushers, and Bruce in the nicest suit you've ever seen.
Yeah.
Both always dressed to the nines.
Oh my goodness, I'm getting chills just when you're talking about it.
And then, Mark, when you turn and walk away, right? You go back to your corner. That guy goes back to his corner. When I would turn back around, it was immediately silent.
Yeah.
It was just silent. Now it was silent.
Oh my goodness, that is
right?
good.
It was just so much noise. How did you eliminate the noise in those game sevens? Because you talked about that. You said you've got to be so locked in.
Yeah.
What tools did you implement to eliminate the noise? Because for me, when it went silent, I knew the task at hand.
Yeah.
I knew what I needed to do.
Well, I think in any time you're into that situation, like a game seven, I think it starts the night before, because you've played 6 games. You're obviously very evenly matched because there's been a lot of ebbs and flows and momentum, and both teams have found it, lost it, and that's ultimately why you get to a game 7, and it's going to be decided by the team that can get through it all and execute a game plan. But when I say it starts the night before, because I think what I learned for me personally is to allow myself to envision losing, that this isn't going to go the way that I was hoping it was going to go to. You envision the disappointment and the despair that you would feel if you lost. And then sometimes that gets misplaced by, what's it going to feel like if we win? So you go through this gauntlet of emotion the night before, and you envisioned all the different scenarios that could happen. And don't fight the fact that, we might lose.
Yeah.
This is a chance that we might lose game 7. Let's just be honest about it. And so I think that is a way to kind of relieve some of that tension and anxiety that can build up leading into the game. Ultimately, as you get closer to the game, what misplaces all that, to your point, what misplaces all that is now you start focusing in on the game plan again.
Yeah.
And the closer you get to the game, all the noise, all the chatter, all the bulletin board stuff, all the naysayers, all the outside noise gets completely, even in your own head, without all the others, gets misplaced by 2 things. What do I got to do individually? What do I got to do with a team? And anything more than that is you can't remember anyway, so it doesn't matter. You could put 10 things on the bulletin board, you're only going to remember 2. So that's what kind of, that is what I think allows, in my experiences there, is to just concentrate on executing the game plan individually and as a team. And the closer you get, so everything else gets misplaced. So then you're not worried about the outcome. You're not concentrating on, are we going to win? Are we going to lose? It doesn't matter. What are we going to do with this next shift? What are we going to do? And you start to compartmentalize the game into little kind of segments that allows yourself to not to look about because the outcome can be paralyzing.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm going to win or lose. I don't know. But I know I can go and have a good shift.
Yeah.
I can control that.
Yeah.
I can do that. I know that I can bounce back if we get a goal scored against us. I know I can do that. I don't know if we're going to win the game because it's 60 minutes away. So I don't want to worry about that.
Yeah.
I want to worry about the things that I can control again.
Yeah. Control the things you can control.
Control.
People are going to get tired of hearing this story on this show, but there's a reason you guys sit here with me on this show. You're a champion and you're a captain, right? I have been on multiple teams, and my peers have voted me captain at the American Kickboxing Academy, at Oklahoma State Wrestling, the United States Olympic Team, Kobe Junior College, Northside High School.
Wow.
Every time they voted me the captain. So that C meant something to me.
But the players are voting.
The players are voting me the captain.
That's the difference.
What does that C mean to you? Because not only did you get the captain, the award now is named after you. I mean, the captain,
Yeah.
right? I got a kid on my fight team. I go, let's go, Cap. When he goes to spar, he lights up.
Yeah.
What does that C mean to you?
Well, in hockey, the captaincy is a really important position. You know, when you're trying to galvanize a team together, how are you going to do that? You know, the relationships that you have to establish with each and every player are important. They got to know you. You got to be approachable. You got to be consistent. You have to be living 25, 30 different lives all at the same time of getting yourself prepared to play at your highest level on top of it all. And there's a massive responsibility. When I see guys, young players getting named captain, they have no idea what they're in for at the professional level.
Yeah.
Where there's a lot at stake for winning and losing. People get hurt, people get traded, families get uprooted, and they're making these young kids captain without any idea what the ramifications are, the consequences are for wrong decisions, and how to pull a team together. And it's just very. But when you ask a question, what does it mean to me? It's a massive responsibility, because of the players that you've been chosen to lead. And Abe Lincoln said it best: "No man can govern another without his consent."
Yeah.
Anybody can give me a captain, but if the players don't allow you to lead them, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
So what are you going to do to earn that trust for those players to allow you to lead them?
Yeah.
They're allowing you to lead them.
Yeah.
So what are you going to do with that? And that's a massive responsibility, and it should never be taken lightly. And when leadership done well, it's very distinguishable.
Yes, it is.
You can feel it. You can feel it. Like you just know it. When I watch these teams, I don't care if it's baseball. When I watched the Toronto Blue Jays this year, you could tell there was amazing culture there. They had a good leadership.
Yep.
They were together. You know, the Dodgers, same thing. I mean, that was the most amazing Game 7 World Series. It was
awesome.
amazing because both teams and the cultures they created, they were playing for each other. And so, yeah, to be honored as a captain means a lot.
You said in the documentary, right, in the Game 7 doc, you said, I was a kid that struggled when I was the focal point of attention. That stuck out to me so much when I was watching it, because how does a guy or a kid go from struggling with the social to having the captainship of the league named after him? What changed? And where did it change that you were like, even now, right? When I give you a compliment or something, you almost kind of shut. I don't really like that. Like, but what changed for you to step into that role and really, I mean, obviously, the way you captained resonated so much that the league even recognized
Right.
that this is what we want our award to be and look like.
Someone asked me a question once. If you walked into a room full of people and you had to get to the very far side to go get a drink at a beer, would you walk straight through the crowd, or would you go around the outside of the perimeter and then come up to the? And I said, well, I'd walk around the outside of the perimeter and go get a beer. But when you're in a leadership position, there's no walking around the perimeter. You're walking right through with your shoulders back, your head up, and you're walking through that room with a purpose. And so, I mean, that's ultimately, if you're going to be in the position, I had to change. I had to be willing to change, and I think I got more comfortable as I got older, and I got more comfortable in, seeing how it's done, and the people that did it, in front of me, and some leaders and guys that I played with, and what it looked like to be a leader, and ultimately, it forces you out of that. Otherwise, you can't be the leader.
No.
Because you have to be the guy out front leading the charge. And sometimes, well done is better than well said. And, words can be meaningful, but they also can fall flat if you don't back it up.
Yeah.
So if they watch you slinking along the outer banks of the room to get back, no, they want to see you walking down the middle of the room with.
And they'll follow you.
And they'll follow you.
And they will follow you right into the fire.
1,000%.
So when
1,000%.
I was named the captain at AKA, I knew that I needed to train hard. I had to live hard. I had to live right. I had to do things the right way, and I had to win.
Yeah.
I knew I needed to perform when I stepped into the octagon, and if I did not win, which happens,
Yeah.
right? I needed to handle it with grace. I needed to go up there and I needed to face the music. I didn't run away. I cried publicly because it mattered so much to me.
Yeah, of course.
That I cried in the middle of an octagon after losing.
Of course.
Because it meant that much.
Yeah.
But my teammates saw that, and it didn't make them go, oh, he's such a pussy crying in an octagon. They said, look at how much it matters to DC.
Yeah.
It needs to matter that much to me.
Exactly.
That he's willing to go out there in the biggest fight in the world and show that. But I had those qualities. To you, what qualities are needed to wear that C that carries your name?
Well, I think you said it. I think it anything less than everything won't be enough. And what are you willing to risk? What are you willing to risk to win? That's a question we all need to look at each other and at the start of every year. What are you going to put into it? What does it mean to you? And that's why when you talk about leadership, why it's so important to get to know everybody on a more of a personal level. We can come to the rink at 9 o'clock in the morning, leave at 2, and on a professional level, and that can be okay, but it's never going to be enough if you're going to try to create this culture and understanding of where every player has come from, where they've been, what motivated them, what inspired them, how did they get here, what are the things, what are they afraid of, what are their fears, what do they struggle with? You need to know everybody intimately in order to help them to be the best, because I can't win if they're not their best. Yeah. How do I help them? How do I help them become their best? Yeah, that's a question. Yeah. That becomes a question, and I think that, often two times, we can never let the game get to the point where, I shouldn't say the game itself, but I mean as far as the team dynamic, because the only thing that really became interesting to me was the team dynamic, and how am I going to create a team? Don't call yourself a team because you're wearing the same uniform.
Yeah, no.
That's different. You might be playing for the same team, but don't call yourself a team if you're not really actually a team. That's different. Yeah. And that takes a lot of work from the core group and from the leaders to understand. And so you guys are all coming together and marching to the same drum, so to speak, and that takes a lot of work. And if you're not willing to put that work in, it's going to be hard to create the culture that's conducive to winning.
Absolutely. The documentary Game 7, I love this analogy. Game 7, it doesn't end, right? Because the sport is done. You and I have pursued broadcasting outside of in retirement. What's it mean to be on air to you, and how do you carry that competition to the broadcast booth?
Well, I first of all, I said before the show started that I'm probably one of the biggest. I don't know if I'm the biggest UFC fight fan.
You love it.
I watched the UFC from the day it started with Hoyt Gracie and all the way through all your fights and all that. So, for me, I look at everybody in life has a Game 7 moment.
Yeah.
And are you prepared to act on it when it comes your way? Yeah. And for me, going into broadcasting now, I wasn't even thinking about doing it. And then someone asked me, are you interested? And I go, well, I don't know. And then I said, yeah, I'll give it a go. I'll try it. And it became one of the hardest things I've done in a long time. To articulate a point, to be entertaining, to educate, to be interesting, to break down a game and to pull it all together when someone's in your ear and the whole thing. But it's been the best thing I've done. And so then ESPN's an amazing with me. They've helped me and coached me. It's been my 5th year now. And the thing that I struggled with, to be honest with you, was being critical of the players. Because I was always the guy that was always trying to be positive and find, and Coach John Wooden said, good coaching is being able to give constructive criticism without resentment. So if, how can you, so when all of a sudden now I'm on the air and now if someone makes a mistake, now I got to be, but I realized after 3 years, it took me 3 years to realize that the fans are now my new teammates.
Yes.
I got to be responsible to the fans. I got to be authentic with the fans. And if someone makes a mistake, I don't have to do it in a mean-spirited way, but I have to highlight the mistake that's always caused an effect in hockey, right?
Yep.
So it's been a learning curve, but it's been amazing. And I said, nobody does it better than you guys on your telecast. You guys break those fights down, and I've been watching it for so many years. I learn something every time when I'm listening to you guys, what's happening in the fight and the grappling and all the, you guys do an amazing job.
You love the fighting, huh?
Love the fighting.
Because all you did was fight when you were growing up in hockey.
Well, that was part of the game. We grew up fighting.
Yeah.
We grew up fighting before the game started. We were fighting in warm-ups. It was a crazy. But also my uncle was managed Muhammad Ali. My dad's brother. So I got a chance to meet Muhammad. We took the whole Oiler team over to his house, and he was doing magic tricks. And I watched all his fights all the way through. I listened to Muhammad Ali and Joe Frazier on a transistor radio in Edmonton, Alberta, when he first fought him in the Garden.
Yeah.
And I had all these images of all the celebrities were there, and I'm listening to Madison Square Garden and all the suits and Frank Sinatra and all this stuff's going on, and here enough, how many years later I'm playing.
You headline it.
I'm playing in
You headlined the Garden. That's crazy how life works, isn't it?
Crazy.
It's insane. I think for me in retirement, I love doing the broadcasting, but for me it's about the impact that I'm having on the people closest to me.
Yeah.
Family, kids that I coach, all that. What about the impact that you're having in your community? Talk about that and how much that means to you as a guy that's a champion and a captain.
Yeah, I think for me, I watched my dad coach and mentor these kids, right? All the way through my own minor hockey, and how much he loved the kids, how much time he put into them, how much he believed in them, how much they respected him. Even though he was tough on them and hard on them, he was always fair with them. And he told them what they needed to hear. Going into retirement myself and being able to coach some minor hockey with my son and being involved in youth sports and they say paying it forward. Like, how can I make an impact?
Yeah.
I can think of so many people that put me in a position when I was younger that helped, minor league coaches, whatever. Everybody needs help.
Yeah.
Everybody needs someone to set them up and put them in a position to succeed. So how can I look at these young boys and girls? What can I do to help them and give them the resources, access, and opportunity? That's what my foundation's about, is access and opportunity. How can I give these kids an opportunity to fulfill their dreams by giving them the tools and the resources to fulfill it? And so that's become something in retirement that I focused on.
And Mark, that's a mentality, right? I keep mentioning the Game 7 documentary. That mentality you carried on the ice is now showing itself in business. Speak to me about the involvement in Game 7, not only as your guys' episode, but the company as a whole.
Yeah, my partner Isaac Cheer and I had the opportunity to secure the trademark of Game 7. And I was thinking to myself, really? Game 7's available?
Yeah.
And because I was thinking, someone's got to own that already. We did. We spent a couple years locking up the trademarks worldwide. And so now what are we going to do with it? So we started with the Amazon series, docuseries on the great Game 7, five great iconic Game 7 moments. We believe that everybody in life has a Game 7 moment. Yes. But are you prepared when that comes your way? What are the life lessons that we can learn through sport and the storytelling through Game 7 moments for the people that actually executed when the pressure was the most? It's the most pressurized moment in sports in a Game 7. So, why have you trained your whole life? You've done it 1,000,000 times. You've practiced 1,000,000 times. You've trained, and then you get to that moment and you fall flat.
Yeah.
And it can happen to a fighter, whether you've overtrained, you've overthought, who knows why, different for everybody, but why are some players, some fighters able to take that opportunity when it matters the most, learn from their past experiences, and then execute in the moment? That is what Game 7 is about. And it doesn't have to be literal in all sports. In life, it can be the same way. Danny DeVito talks about when he interviewed for Taxi. He was nervous. He knew this was a life-changing moment for him. So he walked in there with the script and sat down. They're all looking at him, and he takes the script and he rips it in half. He throws it at him and he goes, "Who wrote this piece of garbage?" And they looked at him and they go, "That's Louis De Palma." And he got the role.
Yeah.
But he was prepared for it.
He's prepared for his moment.
And so it can come from any. So, building a brand around and inspiring and teaching, our young boys and girls, our men and women that will be faced with some adversity at some point in their life, and to learn from these great stories through the Game 7. And sports teaches those. That's what sports does. You get knocked down, you get back up. You fail, you try again. You learn from your lessons. That's the greatest thing about life lessons that we learn through sports and all sports, is that there's no linear path to the top. I mean, you're gonna get knocked down. You're gonna suffer some setbacks. You are gonna suffer some disappointments along the way. But do you have enough courage? Do you have enough grit? Do you have enough determination to want it?
Yeah.
And what are you gonna do to get it?
Mark, through Game 7, you're still connected to the Rangers. What are you most excited about coming up?
Well, we took the patch on the Rangers jersey, so the first time the Rangers ever had a patch or a partner on their jersey, so we're very proud of that. The New York Rangers are always family to me.
Yeah.
Madison Square Garden, the Rangers, the fans. It's the experiences I've had and we've shared together. Now to be a partner with the Rangers with the Game 7 is incredible. Look, we're all hopeful. The idea is to win a Stanley Cup, and it's been almost more than 30 years now since we won in '94.
Yeah.
And the time goes by quickly. Yeah. And we think back about, they had a couple close calls in recent memory, but you don't win by, like I said earlier, you don't win by accident.
No.
And you got 32 teams now. They're all thinking the same thing come September in training camp. They're all trying to win the Stanley Cup. So if you're going to do it, you're going to do it because you've created a game plan, you've executed, and you've prepared for it. And you got to get great players with great character around you in order to do it.
Hey, you got the patch on the Rangers, but let's go San Jose Sharks versus New York Rangers.
Okay.
Me and Mark Messier, opposite sides of the ice. Hey, no grappling though?
I would grapple just for fun.
But with me?
Sure.
Okay, let's do it. I'm not getting on the ice with you, though. That's the one thing I'm not doing. I am not getting checked on the ice by Mark Messier. Hey, you are awesome, and I appreciate your time. Guys, Mark Messier is an absolute savage, and I'm so happy that I was able to sit with him. Until next time, thank you guys all so much for watching Champion Mindset, and we'll see you on the next one.